Stop. These are some gold coins look like a great investment, but they're actually one of the fastest ways to lose money in the gold market. And here's the dangerous part. Most people don't realize it until it's too late. Because in 2026, there are specific gold coins that are massively overpriced. Not slightly expensive, not a little inflated, massively overpriced. And they're often the exact coins beginners rush to buy first. So today, we're breaking down 5 gold coins you should never buy in 2026. Not because gold is bad, but because choosing the wrong gold can destroy your returns. Because here's what most people don't understand. When you buy gold, you're not just buying gold. You're buying the metal, the premium, the liquidity, and the resale reality. And if you get even one of those wrong, you can lose money, even if gold prices go up. Welcome back to John Forecast, where we decode the macro forces behind the gold, silver, and global market moves. So the real question is, which gold coins are silently draining investors' returns right now? Why are they so overpriced? And how are dealers still convincing people to buy them? Let's simplify this. Gold investing sounds easy. Buy gold. Price goes up, you profit. Right? Not exactly. Because in reality, there are 2 completely different markets inside gold. And most people don't know the difference. The first market is the gold price itself. This is the spot price, the actual value of gold as a raw metal. The second market is the premium. This is what you actually pay. And that's where things start to go wrong, because premiums can vary massively, sometimes by 5%, sometimes by 20%, and in extreme cases, even 100% or more. Which means 2 people can buy the same amount of gold on the same day, and one of them is already at a loss the moment they make the purchase. And they don't even realize it, because the industry doesn't make this obvious. Serious investors understand this difference. Beginners usually don't. And that's exactly why certain coins keep selling again and again. Let's start with the first gold coin you should absolutely avoid in 2026. And this one might surprise you, because it's extremely popular. Numismatic gold coins, collector coins, rare coins, limited edition releases, these are often marketed as premium investments. And on the surface, they sound incredible. You're not just buying gold. You're buying history, rarity, exclusivity, something unique. But here's the reality most people never hear. You're not just paying for gold, you're paying for a story, a label, a perceived rarity, and sometimes pure marketing. And that might make sense if you were a serious collector. But most buyers aren't collectors. They're investors. And investors need one thing above everything else: liquidity. Because at some point, you're going to want to sell. And when that moment comes, you're not selling to another collector. You're selling to a dealer. And the dealer doesn't care about your story. They don't care about how rare it sounded when you bought it. They care about gold content, market demand, and their resale margin, which means something very simple. You might pay a 30%, 40%, sometimes even higher premium, and when you go to sell, you'll get paid based mostly on the gold value. That difference, that's your loss. And it happens instantly. Not because gold went down, but because you overpaid. This is where most beginners get trapped, because these coins are sold emotionally. Limited edition? Only a few left. High collector demand, premium asset. But investing isn't about emotion, it's about math, and mathematically, these coins are one of the worst ways to invest in gold, because you're starting from a disadvantage. You're fighting the premium from day one. And most people don't even realize it until they try to sell. Now, if you think that's the biggest mistake people make, it's not, because the second coin on this list is even more dangerous, not because it looks risky, but because it looks safe, it feels safe, and it's recommended everywhere. Fractional gold coins, 1/10 ounce, 1/4 ounce, even smaller pieces, they seem perfect. Lower price, more affordable, easier to start, but affordability can be misleading, because the smaller the coin, the higher the premium, and not just slightly higher, sometimes dramatically higher. You might pay 5 to 8% premium on a 1-ounce gold coin, but on a 1/10 ounce coin, you could be paying 15, 20, even 25% or more. That's a huge difference. But most people don't calculate it. They don't compare the actual gold content to the price they're paying. They just see a lower number and think it's a better deal. But here's the real problem. When you go to sell, you don't recover that premium, so you lose twice. You overpay when buying, and you under-recover when selling, and over time, that destroys your returns, slowly, quietly, without you even realizing it, because on paper, you still own gold, but in reality, you're carrying a hidden loss built into the structure of the investment. And this is exactly how most beginners get stuck. They think they're making smart, safe decisions, but they're unknowingly buying some of the most inefficient forms of gold in the market. And the next coin on this list is even more subtle, because it's something many investors already own without realizing how much it's costing them. And once you see it, you won't look at your gold portfolio the same way again. And the next coin on this list is one that a lot of investors already own. In fact, you might already have it in your portfolio right now. And the problem with this one isn't obvious at first, because on the surface it actually looks like a smart choice. It looks official, recognized, trusted, easy to buy, easy to sell. But once you look a little deeper, you start to see the issue. We're talking about gold coins that carry excessive brand-driven premiums. Coins where you're not just paying for gold, you're paying for the name. Now don't get this wrong. There are well-known gold coins in the market that are excellent for liquidity. They're widely recognized, easy to trade, and generally priced fairly. But there's a point where that recognition turns into overpricing. And that's where the problem begins, because some coins carry premiums that are far higher than others, even though the gold content is exactly the same. Same purity, same weight, same intrinsic value, but completely different price. Why? Because of branding, because of demand perception, because of marketing, and because many investors assume if it's more popular, it must be better. But in investing, popularity doesn't always mean value. In fact, it often means the opposite. Because when something becomes extremely popular, it becomes crowded. And when it becomes crowded, it becomes expensive. And when it becomes expensive, your upside gets limited. That's exactly what happens here. You're paying extra, not for more gold, but for perception. And here's the part most people miss. When you go to sell, that premium doesn't always come back to you. Dealers don't always pay you based on what you paid. They pay based on what they can resell it for. And if the demand shifts even slightly, that premium can shrink or disappear completely. Which means, again, you're taking a loss that has nothing to do with gold prices. Just like before, it's not about gold going down. It's about overpaying on the way in. Now let's take this one step further, because there's another category that looks like a great deal but can quietly work against you. And this one catches a lot of people off guard. Gold coins sold in special packaging or limited sets. You've probably seen these. Beautiful presentation boxes, certificates, fancy designs, sometimes even bundled collections. They look premium. They feel exclusive, and they're priced that way too. But here's the reality. That packaging doesn't add value to the gold. It adds cost, and often a lot of it. Because what you're really buying in those cases is presentation, not investment efficiency. And here's where things get tricky. When you buy these products, you're paying for the coin, the packaging, the marketing, and the perceived exclusivity. But when you sell, you're mostly getting paid for the gold, not the box, not the certificate, not the story, just the metal. Which means, once again, there's a gap between what you paid and what you can recover, and that gap is your loss. This is how the market quietly transfers value from uninformed buyers to experienced participants. Now, at this point, you might be thinking, okay, so premiums matter, liquidity matters, resale matters, and you'd be right. But there's one more layer to this that almost nobody talks about, and it's one of the biggest reasons investors make mistakes in gold. It's the difference between buying gold and investing in gold, because those are not the same thing. Buying gold is easy. Anyone can do it. You walk into a dealer, pick a coin, pay the pricey, and you're done. But investing in gold, that requires understanding structure, understanding pricing, understanding how the market actually works. Because gold itself is a simple asset, but the way it's sold is not, and the biggest advantage dealers have is information. They know which products carry higher margins. They know which coins have higher premiums. They know what sells best to beginners. And naturally, those are the products they push the most. Not because they're the best investments, but because they're the most profitable for the seller. And if you don't understand that, you end up buying what's marketed to you instead of what actually benefits you. That's why these mistakes are so common, not because people are careless, but because the system is designed that way. Now let's bring this back to the bigger picture, because everything we've talked about so far leads to one key idea. Gold investing is not just about owning gold, it's about how you own it. Because two investors can both say, I own gold, but one of them is positioned correctly, and the other is carrying hidden disadvantages. Higher premiums, lower liquidity, worse resale conditions. And over time, those differences add up. They compound. They affect your returns more than you think. And that's exactly why avoiding the wrong coins is just as important as choosing the right ones. Now, if you followed this far, you already understand more than most investors. But we're not done yet, because the final coin on this list is the one that surprises people the most. It doesn't look risky. It doesn't look overpriced. It actually looks like a smart, balanced choice. But under the surface, it has one of the biggest hidden problems in the entire gold market. And once you understand it, you'll never look at gold investing the same way again. And now we come to the final coin on this list, and this one is the most dangerous of them all. Not because it looks risky, not because it's obviously overpriced, but because it looks like the perfect middle ground. Safe, balanced, smart. And that's exactly why so many investors fall for it. We're talking about gold coins sold through high markup retail channels, coins sold through TV ads, online promotions, aggressive marketing campaigns, or high pressure sales environments. Now, at first glance, there's nothing wrong with these coins. They're real gold. They're legitimate products. They often come from recognized mints. So what's the problem? The problem is not the gold. It's the pricing. Because these channels almost always carry the highest premiums in the entire market. And not by a small margin, sometimes dramatically higher than standard dealer pricing. You might be paying 10% more, 20% more, even 30% more for the exact same gold content, same weight, same purity, same metal, completely different price, and most buyers don't realize it because the selling process is designed to feel convincing, urgent, reassuring, professional. You hear things like limited availability, high demand, exclusive opportunity. Prices are rising. And in the moment, it feels like you need to act, like you might miss out. But here's the reality. You're not missing an opportunity. You're stepping into a markup. And that markup is your future loss. Because just like the other coins we talked about, when you go to sell, you don't get that premium back. Dealers don't pay based on what you paid. They pay based on the current market and the underlying gold value. So once again, you start behind. And that's the pattern you should be seeing by now. Every bad gold investment shares one thing in common. You overpay on the way in, and you can't recover it on the way out. That's it. That's the entire game. And once you understand that, everything becomes clearer. Now let's step back for a moment, because this isn't just about avoiding bad coins. It's about understanding how to think about gold properly. Because most people approach gold the wrong way. They focus on the wrong questions. They ask, is this coin popular? Does it look valuable? Is it easy to buy? But the real questions are different, much more practical, much more important. Questions like, how much premium am I paying? How easy is this to resell? What will a dealer actually pay me for this? Because those are the questions that determine your outcome. Not the story, not the marketing, not the packaging, the math, always the math. And this is where the mindset shift happens. Because once you start thinking this way, you stop being a buyer. And you start thinking like an investor. You stop chasing what looks good, and you start focusing on what works. And what works is efficiency, low premiums, high liquidity, strong resale markets, simple, recognizable products that don't carry unnecessary costs. That's how serious investors approach gold, not emotionally, not impulsively, but strategically. Now here's something even more important. Gold itself is not the problem. Gold is one of the most stable assets in the world. It's been used as a store of value for thousands of years. It holds purchasing power. It performs well during uncertainty. It has a role in almost every serious portfolio. But the way you buy gold determines whether it actually works for you or against you. And that's the difference most people never fully understand. They think, if gold goes up, I win. But that's only true if you bought it correctly. If you didn't overpay. If you didn't sacrifice liquidity. If you didn't trap yourself in high premiums. Because if you did, even a rising gold market might not save your returns. And that's the harsh reality. Now let's bring everything together. We've talked about 5 types of gold coins you should avoid. Coins where you're paying for collectability instead of value. Coins where the size creates excessive premiums. Coins where branding inflates the price beyond reason. Coins where packaging adds costs without adding real value. And coins sold through high markup channels that quietly drain your returns. Different categories, different strategies, but the same underlying problem, overpaying. That's what connects all of them, and that's what you need to avoid. Because in gold investing, your entry point matters more than you think. Not just the price of gold, but the price you pay relative to it. That difference is everything. Now here's the final insight, and this is something most people only realize after making mistakes. Gold investing is not about finding the best coin. It's about avoiding the worst ones. Because once you remove the bad options, what's left is usually simple, clean, efficient, and effective. And that's where you want to be. Now think about this. 2 investors enter the gold market at the same time, same gold price, same amount of money. But one buys high premium coins, the other buys low premium liquid products. 5 years later, gold has gone up. But their results are completely different. One sees strong returns. The other sees disappointment. Not because gold behaved differently, but because their choices did. And that's the difference this video is trying to show you. Not just what to avoid, but how to think. Because once you understand this framework, you don't just avoid bad coins. You make better decisions across the entire market. Now I want to leave you with one question, and it's an important one. When you look at your gold portfolio right now, are you holding value or are you holding premiums? Because those are not the same thing. And the answer to that question will determine your future returns. So what do you think? Have you ever bought a gold coin and later realized you overpaid? Or do you think premiums don't matter as much as people say? Drop your thoughts in the comments. And if you want to understand investing at a deeper level, not just what to buy, but how to think, make sure you subscribe. Because most people buy assets, smart investors understand them. And that difference changes everything